Come on, don't worry about where she went.
Yeah, you can go too. Morning. Today I have my big scan with Rebecca. I am super nervous. I think there was 180 around there that I bred, and it bred them in July, and July was super hot. I'm trying to convince myself it's going to be okay. My goal is like 70%. If I get 70% today, that would make the cedars kind of worthwhile and the group kind of big enough. I'm really hoping that the scan is okay. And whoever misses, if they've only missed their first time, they will get rebred in October with the group that I sorted last week. If it's their second miss, they're gonna have to be shipped. If they miss twice, that's almost the equivalent of them on an annual system. So if you can't get them bred within a year, they're not productive and you're putting way too much into them.
Off like a female. The male was a.
Well, they're not going to check.
No, and they had a ram lamb that was weathered with storm pepper.
They're all together.
She redeemed herself.
A good girl. Younger ones, you see them. They either all go good or they all go really bad. Me right now?
Well, he was going to lend us he'd gone up to the plowing, and he was sitting behind his.
So last week we had our first really successful out-of-season ultrasound or scan. She did an ultrasound on about 172 ewes that were bred in July. And July is such a hard time to breed in Canada, probably in the States as well. Sheep are a seasonal animal. They don't typically like to breed in longer daylights, so their best time of year is now. I think I have 6 things that I'd like to share with you that I did, and there's a few things I did different this particular group versus some other ones I've done in the past, especially last year. Excuse me. We have been working pretty hard for the last few years creating balanced rations that help these ewes perform at their very best. I get teased a lot that my ewes are big, and they are, but quite a few of them are pretty good, especially when they're getting ready to get bred. So there's a few things I do. About 2 weeks before I add the ram, so 2 weeks before ram introduction, I will increase their plane of nutrition. So they go from a maintenance ration, which these guys are on right now. What I have is some haylage mixed with some dry hay. That's all they're getting, and some mineral. If these guys were the ones, they're already bred. But if they were the ones getting bred, what I would do is kind of the day that I want to insert my cedars, I will start feeding a flush program. So I will increase the feed energy and a little bit of protein and just get them so they feel a change in their diet. It's kind of like if you've been on a diet for like 6 months, say, and then all of a sudden we're gonna be like, you know what? You have to train for a marathon. We are going to increase your carb load. We're gonna increase, we're just gonna increase your energy so you can do this. So in this case, hopefully produce more eggs, get everything kind of working, and get them ready for that excess energy that they're gonna need when they're breeding. What I also do, I will keep those ewes on that increased plane of nutrition for the whole 21 days those rams are in with them. So they are in for 2 heats. A heat is basically every 17 to 21 days. So day 1 counts as the first cycle, and majority of the ewes will catch in that first little chunk. The last cycle will start in that 17 to 21 days. So hopefully, in theory, every animal should have 2 chances to get bred. That seemed to work really, really good with this group. So I will keep them on that flush ration for that whole time. And I'll also keep, this is gonna sound ridiculous, and this is probably why everyone says my ewes are fat, but I keep them on that ration for a month after I pull the rams out. So 3 to 4 weeks. 4 weeks is what I've figured out works the best with mine. You really need to have a good plane of nutrition when all that stuff's happening. That's the stuff we can't see, but that's the stuff she's doing inside. So since I've switched to the 4-week post ram removal, I haven't seen those uneven lamb sizes. So I'm gonna contribute that to that higher plane of nutrition. Another question I get asked a lot is, what do I do with these rams? You know, do I move them? Do they stay? So the quick answer is they always stay in this barn. The ewes always have contact with these rams. They're not in the same pen as long as my gates stay attached. That is the goal. So yes, they always stay in this barn. They always stay in a pen on their own. So in July, it was really, really hot. I got Charlie out, and he came out, and we just sheared the rams. We got them all sheared just so they would be a bit cooler. In the heat of the summer, the sperm can actually die, and it takes 60 days for it to replenish. I also hoof trim them. I gave them their Tasvax vaccination. That gets done once a year. So it's nice to kind of do that stuff before the summer breeding. Just to keep them cool and get that done. The hoof trimming, I'm a little bit leery of doing it too close to when you want them to breed, because if they're used to walking a certain way on their feet, I don't want to screw up anything that's gonna put them off balance when they're breeding. So another thing I did with that ram group, I bought this big fan last year. Didn't help last year, but I'm not sure if it did anything or not, but I ran it in front of the ram pen. So I put it kind of there, and you know, the rams were nice and sheared, so I'm not sure if that helped, but I ran that fan on them. They all kind of gathered right there, but at least it was better than no air at all. Even some warm air blowing on you in the dead of the summer still feels better than nothing. I have met with a guy looking at putting in some circ fans, so that might, it's been on my list for like 3 years and I still haven't done it. It is something that I'd like to do with these July breeding groups for sure. So another thing that I think doesn't hurt to have as a part of the toolbox is the fact that the breeds that I'm using do have potential to breed all year long. They've got a lot of Dorset genetics in them, they've got a lot of Rideau genetics in them. If any of those things are an issue, they're probably not going to breed out of season. They might not even breed in season if any of that is amiss. So just always be aware that health and nutrition is still top of mind in any situation with a production animal. I do this more than just my July group. I use cedars and PMSG, and I use them in my July group, my January group, breeding groups. July breeding group, January breeding group, and April breeding group. Not because I think they help them conceive, although I do think the PMSG helps them ovulate, especially out of season. That April and January, I could get away with not using cedars and PMSG, I think. April, but January for sure I could get away with it. The problem is January breeding is June lambing. June is when I'm doing hay, when we're still in the fields, hardcore, when I don't have a lot of help because they're still in school. So my June, I just want a very compressed lambing group. So I use cedars and PMSG for different reasons. The reason I used them in the July group is more probably on that PMSG side. But the cedars, it still doesn't hurt to help them cycle. The PMSG helps them ovulate, just everything. I mean, they still need the potential to do it, but I don't think it hurts to use these things as well. I will show you what they look like. I've showed you lots of times of how I do this. There's a ton of old videos on how I do use the cedars. This is the cedar applicator, and I always use lube, and you should always wear gloves because there are some hormones on this. So this is called a cedar. So they look like little, I don't have gloves. Oh, I have my handy dandy cleaning gloves. Let's use those. This is a cedar. Just like so. So that gets inserted into her vagina, and it stays in her. The program that I use, it stays in her for 12 days. 12 to 14 days. I pull the cedar, I give them, I don't have my PMSG with me, I have to order more. I get it all through my vet. This is stuff you can't order online or anything. You do have to have a vet client relationship when you're doing this stuff. So I pull the cedar after 12 days or 13 days, and I give them that shot of PMSG, which typically is about my ewes, the size they are, 2.5 milliliters is oodles. Yes, I have some ewes that are a little bit bigger, but they still seem to breed okay, just with that 2.5 mils. But again, talk to your vet on dosages, and because it's all based on the weight of your ewes. So you can't go by what I do, you have to go by what works for your farm. So I will use the cedars in all the groups except for this next group coming up, which is that late October, early November period, because they are gonna lamb mid to late March, and for me, that's okay. I can have a long lambing period at that time. I mean, I curse it when it happens, but it's gonna save me money and time, like inserting all those cedars every single time and giving them, and handling those animals twice before they even get bred. It's a lot. It's kind of stress on the animal, stress on me, and it's expensive. It's about $7 for a cedar and about $7 for the shot of PMSG. And when they are in season, they don't need it. Like your ewes, if they are in good, as you saw, they're in good condition. If they're in good condition, their health is good, their nutrition is good, and their rams are good. There is no reason you need to use a cedar and PMSG unless it's the lambing part that you're worried about. If you need a tight lambing group because you have another job, or you have a busy family, or you have holidays or whatever, then I get it. Then use cedars and PMSG to tighten up that lambing group and sync them, and so you know exactly when they're gonna have babies. That is why I do it for the other 3. So the other 3 times that I lamb, it's always overlapping with field work. A little different thing that I did this year, I did a couple things different, but the one main thing, when Rebecca was here, we got talking about how other producers are doing out of season breeding and how they're getting successful numbers, and I'm like, what is the tricks? Like, what am I doing wrong? Last year I was only running the rams in for 1 cycle. I got rid of that this year and I went back to the 2 cycles, so I think that helped. It gives everybody a chance to get bred twice. The other thing that she kind of mentioned is she knew a producer that started really increasing his ram to ewe ratio. When you're using a cedar program, they always say do about a 5 to 1 ratio, so 5 ewes to every 1 ram. And that's always worked really well for me, and that's kind of been what I've always done. She said this guy reduced it to 2 to 1, and I'm like, well, there's no way I can do 2 to 1 because I don't have enough rams. But I did work out the math that if I split the group in half, both groups in half, I could get it down to 3 to 1. So I went from 5 to 1, 5 ewes to 1 ram, to 3 to 1. So whether that helped, honestly, at the end of the day, if their sperm was dead, it wouldn't matter how many rams I had in here. My very last thing that I contribute a very successful scan to is luck. I sometimes have no idea what I do wrong or what I do right. I feel like I try my hardest in every single group. Sometimes I make decisions and I do things that afterwards I kick my own butt because I'm like, why did I do that? The one thing I've done in the past is run ewe lambs, so first time ewes in with mature ewes, and they will not breed because they won't fight for the ram. So I learned that last year. That was a hard lesson. This group had some ewe lambs. They were repeat offenders. I did not have enough room in a pen to make them their own pen with their own rams, so I put them in with some mature ewes. Sure enough, they didn't breed. So there is something to that. So that was kind of my fault. So that scan actually could have been even a bit higher on that group. But I am so happy, you guys. This whole year has been a lot better results with my breeding groups. And what I want to do over the next couple videos is talk a little bit more about my breeding groups and how I've developed a breeding system. I mean, I've talked to you guys already a lot about it, but I really want to do a good hardcore in-depth video on my breeding system and what that looks like in 2019 and the results of how they've been. They've all been really quite good. I've been really happy with them. That's coming in the next few weeks. I hope this helps you guys. Don't give up. Breeding doesn't have to be this challenging and complicated. I make it this way because I'm intensive. I have an intensive farm. It's just the way I choose to do this. A lot of farmers will look at this and say, you're freaking crazy. You don't need to do all that. You don't. But this is what's worked for me. I had a good scan and I just wanted to share with you guys the tricks behind it, what I think it is anyway. At the end of the day, it could have just been luck. So if it is, thank you, universe. Have a good day. Thanks for watching.